What is going on, guys? And happy Wednesday. Today, I have Chris from ACI Aquaculture on today. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you.
Good,
Um,
good.
so today is going to be a good chat. I know lots of people, everyone in this hobby loves the coral. Everyone loves growing coral. And, today we're going to start and dig into the actual farming of coral. So, kind of its own little extra awesome way all about growing it. So, yeah, how's things going? How's your day been?
Uh, oh no, day was interesting. It's never a dull moment at the farm. New farm system's been running for like 4 months now, and just out of the blue today, a bulkhead decided it was going to crack in a 400-gallon sump. Uh,
Oof.
we had to try to figure out how to get that replaced without draining the entire sump, and it took a little while to figure out, but we only lost about 2 gallons of water, so I guess
Hey, that's
went
not
pretty
bad.
good.
That's not bad considering out of 400. Not bad at all.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely, definitely.
Yep.
So how are you?
It's been a crazy day, but good. But good. No
Yeah,
complaints.
yeah,
Yep.
good,
I
good,
was
good.
just obviously I saw you a couple days ago down in Orlando, so it's been crazy busy the last little bit, all over the place, shooting videos and whatnot. So, but it's been good.
Awesome,
But,
awesome.
so,
Yeah, it was nice to meet you over at Waterbox. I was had a good time over there. It was fun.
mhm,
It was nice to be able to get the whole message that we want to put out there. At least started.
mhm.
30 minutes wasn't really enough time to even get going. With Jake on board there with me as well. I thought we complimented each other very well when it came down to what the message was that we were trying to put across. Just not enough time to actually even get into
Scratch the surface.
it. It was a little scratch.
Mhm. All right. So obviously, your company is ACI Aquaculture. Now, the difference between aquaculture, or if we're going more for the farming aspect, how would you define farming coral over just what the general people say is aquaculture?
Well, I mean, aquaculture is there's a lot of different ways you can look at coral and consider
Mhm,
it being aquaculture. What we do here at ACI is, the company is named ACI Aquaculture because in the
mhm,
very beginning, it was kind of just an idea that popped up, and learned real quick that farming corals or aquaculturing corals is a lot more to it than what I knew in the beginning when I started, and it's a long process to actually truly aquaculture a coral, or what I like to say, farm a coral.
mhm,
Everything that we have at ACI that is what we call lineage corals to ACI. Majority of it was brought in from a wild import. I don't know if everybody knows, but we are a wholesaler. We wholesale corals and we wholesale tropical, saltwater fish and inverts. We started off with, coral fragments that were healed. I call them chop shop corals. People say that
mhm.
that's not the
Yeah.
right name. Sugarcoat it. Why sugarcoat it? It is what it is.
Mhm.
You can chop a coral up and you can glue it and you can sell it. That's not aquaculture.
Yep.
You can chop a coral, you can let it heal so that the customer actually gets a truly sellable piece of coral as soon as it gets tanked into their system. That's more like propagation.
Mhm.
It spreads I always say, spreads the love out. You get this beautiful piece of coral, you cut it up in a bunch of pieces, and instead of one store getting that piece of coral, depending on the size of it and what it is, I can spread that out to multiple stores. So that way
Mhm.
there's multiple people have the opportunity to actually have that coral in their aquarium and then grow it, aquaculture it.
Mhm.
What we do a little bit of both. I mean, like I said, we started the company doing chop shop corals that were healed, and we took off from there. It worked out really well for us. We might have been the first in the country to sell wholesale coral frags.
Nice.
I know that there was other places like ORA that were farming corals, but there wasn't anybody really doing LPSs and a lot of the other corals that are everybody does nowadays. So when you want to define what farming is or
Mhm.
aquaculture, I mean, what is it?
Well,
What we
okay.
call, go ahead.
No, here's another question too. So with yours, how much of what you do now is importing versus growing out of stuff that you've had for years that's kind of becoming your lineage to an extent and redistributing and go from there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it takes time to actually
Mhm.
truly, farm a coral from, an original mother colony that we received from the wild, or from fragments that we received that, I go to some of these swaps, or I go to some shops and I'm like, I need that coral for the farm. And it might only be one fragment that's, an inch. How long does
Mhm.
it take to grow that coral out? Well,
Long,
I mean,
long
I can
time.
give you the data. I've got data on multiple types of species of coral that we farm. I mean, some stuff can, I'll give you one example. We had released it. Well, we didn't release it. We had it Reefapalooza 2015 in Orlando. We brought over a fascination phobites that we had encrusted onto a plug, and it was really nice, and we gave it away for a raffle. I wish I wouldn't have done that. I'm glad I did, because somebody's enjoying that coral. Hopefully they still have it alive. But we ended up with 4 more fragments of it that we had that, you know were farmed from
Mhm.
those 4 original fragments, and that was in 2015. We didn't release that coral in the market until 2019.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it didn't grow fast, but being a commercial business, and offering our products or our corals to retail stores, we don't offer them to the end user, the
Mhm.
hobbyists. We sell strictly to retail store owners. Um, we had to have, hundreds of them available in the market, for, our large customer base to actually be able to purchase them. If we only launched 30 of them and
It was
200
fast.
customers wanted them, well, sorry,
Yeah.
but, so it didn't make any sense to launch, a small amount of them.
Mhm.
So we waited until there was over 300 coral fragments that were on 3/4 inch frag plugs that were grown from those original 4, fragments that we got.
Yeah.
That's what I
It's
call farming. I
it
mean,
is.
it's you can't, in my opinion, you can't call a coral farmed or truly aquacultured if you could actually cut that coral and find that, okay, this was the original skeleton from the original fragment that was made.
Mhm.
Well, it's not far enough out of the wild.
Yeah.
Our corals, when any customer is going to be purchasing them, can be assured that everything is so far out of the wild. And, you know but how do you define generations of coral,
It's
without?
continuously just grows. So I mean, there is no defining
Exactly.
thing. Like I took the tip off and it's now a new colony. So I guess that's yeah,
Exactly.
it is hard to differentiate. Okay, before this one scrolls away, Jeremy Young was asking, I always meant to ask him if he's farming any leather or Indonesian corals.
Oh my gosh, Indonesian corals. As soon as, we got, on May 2nd of 2018, we received 2 very large coral shipments, from Indonesia. And we were so ecstatic because they were absolutely stunning. And then 2 days later, we got the knife driven into the heart.
Yeah.
It's no longer coming in. And so, yes, we have a lot of Indonesian corals in the farm, and unfortunately, a year and a half isn't long enough for some of those corals to actually be marketed and put, available on the wholesale level,
Mhm.
in the numbers that we need. Now, we have acroporas, and I'm sure Devin can show you some photos. I sent him some quick snapshots of the farm. They're not the best photos,
Yeah.
but I think my wife also sent him some photos as
Yeah.
well to show you some of the stuff. But we took, you know well, of course, we have to run our business. We have to, keep our employees paid. We have to pay ourselves. We have to make sure our overhead's paid. So unfortunately, we weren't able to keep all of what we had on those last 2 shipments. So of course, I wanted to more than anybody could possibly imagine, because I didn't know if we were ever going to get it back.
Yeah.
Now, did we keep, certain
A piece
choice
of each.
pieces? Oh, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Mhm.
think every single coral, especially on the acropora side, if we didn't already have a fragment of it on the farm, that was a fragment that was put on the farm. So at this
Mhm.
point in time, we have, I was told 92 by my guy Steven that does my farming, but
Nice.
I think it's even more than that. Um, that we started on tiles, and they were literally anywhere from like a 1 inch frag that we glued to that tile, and watched it grow over a year and 6 months, and we just started releasing frags of those corals. Our first release of our overgrowth on those was about a month and a half ago,
Mm,
and some of them were huge successes. I mean, customers
nice.
were going crazy over them, and we're selling them at a wholesale level. So we're not going to charge you $200 for a little itty bitty, chop coral that, in my opinion, doesn't have any value. If the coral was truly farmed and everything that was fragged off of it from the growth, that's farmed. And prices have gotten to be out of control. And my whole goal when I started ACI was to actually make it affordable for that guy that has a job that makes like $60,000, $70,000 a year. He's got a
Most of
house.
us.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
it's getting to the point now where it's so out of control with the cost of some of these corals that you know the average guy that's doing everything he can to make a living, to pay his bills and everything, he has not enough left over to buy what one piece of coral a month. I mean, $200 for this acropora. Our goal is to put them on the market so that you're going to have people that are going to say, "Oh my God, you sold that too cheap to me. I got $200 for it when you charged me X for it." And
Hmm.
what? Good for you. But guess what? That mom and pop down the street that would never have that coral at $200 for an inch, you know, they
Hmm.
got it, and now they're selling it at way less than what you're selling it for. So it's going to take a lot of time, but the goal is
Hmm.
to actually bring it back to being affordable for that guy that wants to have the aquarium for his house, but right now can't afford it.
I'm sure just about every reefer out there is like thanking you right now.
Well, it takes
Hmm.
time, everybody. I mean, we
Hmm.
have right now currently, when Indonesia did shut down, back to the question, Indonesian corals, I'm going to say there's probably just in my sump alone over 150. Yeah, my
You
sump.
had a lot.
You can show that photo too. That's pretty insane. Jake Adams was here last Thursday night and Friday, and he's just like, dude, your sump is insane. He couldn't believe all the corals we had growing in it. Yeah,
That'll
that's my
focus.
sump. It's 600 gallons, and
Packed every
half of
inch.
it half of it has corals, in it, and the other half is just open for us to, do our normal maintenance. Um, but it's definitely when it comes down to Indonesian corals, there's a few hundred different types that we have on the farm that we are growing out. How long is it going to take us to get them available?
As long as
The
it takes.
acros, we're releasing them slowly.
Hmm.
Fabias, Phobites, Ganastrias. I mean, I got some ridiculous Ganastrias, and it probably took a year for them to get back to where they originally looked from when we brought them in and fragged them up to actually start our own mother colonies. But some of them now have gotten back to their full glory from what the day they came in. It just takes time, and they're growing really well, but it could be 4 years, 5 years before some of this stuff's on the market. And
Hmm.
I'm patient. You have to be patient in this industry. If you're not patient, please don't waste your money
It's true. It's
because
very true.
it can take your pocketbook from being, good to in a heartbeat. Just be patient. I always tell everybody to be patient with this industry. You're gonna have your ups and downs, and in time, my goal is to offer very affordable corals to retail stores, and the ones that want to gouge people for them, more power to them. Doesn't make me want to raise my price because somebody got 10-time markup on a piece. I want the mom and pops that are kind of priced out of the industry right now to be able to start selling corals again. And with just having Australia here, everybody knows the Australian
Hmm.
corals have gone up in price. Um, it's not really that much different from shipment to shipment, unless you're talking
Hmm.
about acros, and then it's like heaven when I get an acro
Heavy.
shipment, especially when it's 300.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, speaking of acros, Derek was asking any advice on coloring up SPS that have turned brown.
You know what? I love brown SPS corals. People when
It,
I was
they,
when I was just got into the hobby, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
25 years ago. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's probably more than that now. But I used to buy brown corals because I always wanted to see what they would do. I always said the coral wasn't collected because it was brown,
Mhm.
so it's a mystery coral to me. I have so many corals that were brown frowns that were just sitting in my system, not doing anything. My advice to you is be patient. Like I said a little while ago, it will color back up. The best thing I can tell you, depending on the species of the coral, it's going to, require different environments. A lot of people don't realize that feeding acroporas is something that is very important. They just think that it's, all about the light. They all come from crystal clear, clean water, like in the outer barrier reef, which is not the case. Yes, there's so many beautiful acroporas out there, and they're not going to benefit by feeding them nearly as much as, say, the inshore reefs, where my favorite acros come from. Acropora millipora is probably it's probably the most popular of the acroporas, and I would have to probably say it would be tenuous. And tenuous come from the outer reefs and the inshore reefs, but the millies come from the inshore reefs that are, people call it dirty water. It's like the farthest from the truth. Just because you can't see through it, 100 feet doesn't mean it's dirty. It's just silty because the currents are strong, or there's a lot of, other factors that cause it to be silty. Parameters are probably still just as good, if not better, than your own aquarium.
Yeah, probably.
So the best advice I can give to you is feed your corals. If you have a problem with nutrients in your system, figure out how to take care of the nutrients without using chemicals. I don't use any chemicals in my systems. We've got a 2,200 gallon farm system as our main farm. And we feed 5 pounds of ReefDudes about every 2.5 months. So
buckets of it.
Yeah, literally. I had Phil and Stefano, get me a bucket of it, and I wasn't supposed to tell anybody about it. And I was having fun one day at work, and I took a picture of it and posted it. And Phil calls me. He's like, "Chris, you weren't supposed to post that." I'm like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." He's like, "It's okay, no worries." But I've ordered. We started doing ReefDude 5 pound buckets back in January, and I'm on my 4th bucket this year so far. Now we just started our 4th bucket, and the biggest problem that I can see as a hobbyist with coloring the acros up and wanting to feed a lot is you're going to have problems with your nutrients.
Now,
I usually go ahead.
Just defining a problem for your nutrients. Where do you keep your nutrient levels at in your systems?
I like my nitrates to be between 4 and 10.
Okay.
I like my phosphates to be between, a lot of people think it's crazy that I have phosphate levels this high, but it's usually they're between like 0.25. They go all the way down to 0.03. I don't like them to go below that because I think you have to have the nutrients in your water. You can't go completely sterile, or you end up with complete pale corals. And personally, I don't think that looks as nice.
No.
But it's so hard to keep those two in check. And there's ways you can do it. A sulfur denitrator works. They're such a pain in the rear end. I've tried them. I will not ever recommend that to anybody. You got what they call chemicals like Nopox, or you got vodka dosing, you got sugar dosing. I mean, yeah, you can do all of that stuff. But, I've always been one to try to figure out how to do it as natural as possible. A protein skimmer, a good protein skimmer will remove your nitrates for you if you dial it in properly. It's not going to be perfect if you're feeding as much ReefDudes as I feed. So we have quite large. It's rated for, I think, 3,500 gallons on a 2,200 gallon system, and it never kept up. It always was right between 10 and 20. And then a good buddy of mine, Josh Johnson, I think you know him from Clearwater Scrubbers.
He's actually in the chat. I was laughing. Richard's in here.
Oh, he is? What's up, Josh?
Richard's in here. He goes, ask him who told him about Scrubbers. And then Josh has a little happy face.
Well, and Josh doesn't even know the how good his product really is until I gave him all the feedback that he needed. And now he's just like, holy cow.
He's the ego a bit.
His scrubbers are by far, hands down, build quality, ease of use. They're amazing. And he wanted me to put 2 of his commercial units on my system. And I didn't have the room to do 2, so I put 1 on. I figured 1 was better than none. And after about 3 months, I started really noticing huge differences in, the amount of algae growing and just the overall colors of the corals. And I really started monitoring the phosphates. I don't monitor the nitrates at all. Every time I test it, it's 4. to 10. And it never fails. That's just the way it's been with the protein skimmer. And now the algae scrubber has been on there for a year now. But the thing that was blowing my mind and blew Josh's mind, I mean, he still had a hard time understanding how this was possible. This commercial scrubber that was supposed to be like 750 gallons on a 2,200 gallon system was removing, it was removing 0.2 ppm of phosphates per day.
That's huge.
And it was like, I would dose Polyp Lab Polyp Booster just to get some phosphates in the water, and then test it. The next day it'd be 0.2 lower. The next day it'd be down into the 0.0. And, I just started dosing Polyp Booster like every 2 days and then feeding the corals only twice a week. But when you have as many corals as we have, and then I got a coral geek as a farmer, he likes to go around with a turkey baster and literally when you have 35 or 40,000 fragments plus the colonies, he literally target feeds every one of them twice a week. It's like a 3-hour process, which is pretty cool. So back to the SPS coloring up or a brown SPS coral. If you can keep your nutrients in check and you can feed your corals, and depending on what lighting you're using, I am not a fan of the LEDs for my farm because I'm still old school. I still love my metal halides. I still love my T5s. And, Jake Adams Evans was just going, wow, nothing like a metal halide and a T5. Look at your corals. And, I see people using LEDs, and I got to go see another coral farm because Jake was in town, and blew my mind that they were using radions as their, on a 12-hour cycle. But then you look up in under the hood and there's 400-watt radiums, kicking on for 5 hours a day. And I'm looking at all the corals going, these corals don't look like this because they're radions. They look like this because of the metal halides. And they tried just straight radions and they could not get the corals to color up. They were colored, but they were more, I don't know, they just weren't attractive. And the halides brought all the attractiveness out. So if you have the ability and you want to, and you can even get your hands on them anymore, I always say if you got a brown coral, put it under metal halides and just watch it. It could take 2 months, could take 3 months, could take 6 months for that brown acro to color back up. It all has to be, you have to have stable water parameters, and it's the biggest problem in a reef aquarium,
We change it too much.
What's that?
We change it too much, and people change something and they expect something to happen a day or a week later, but it takes months for that change to like settle in and, the corals to resettle and adapt again before they start to shine.
That you couldn't be more right. I mean, that is, again, everybody wants instant gratification, and this is a living animal we're talking about here. If he's not happy, he's not going to be happy. And when he's happy, as long as you don't do something to make him unhappy, it's going to stay happy. And water parameters need to be consistent. You can't have big alkalinity swings. You can have some swings in your calcium and your magnesium, but in reality, you should have them, keep them as stable as possible as well. Alkalinity.
Okay. On that point, I know I'm going to get asked in 2 seconds. Where do you keep your calcium, milk, and mag at?
I'm a firm believer between 8.3, 8.6 on my alkalinity and DKH. I like to keep my calcium on the lower side, around 390 to 420. And then I like to keep my magnesium on the higher side. We keep it anywhere between 1350 and as high as 1500. And that's, we have an open air environment where we are. We don't have a nice, tight, air conditioned house. So we are prone to whatever the atmosphere is what we have. So bottom line, the higher magnesium level has been, when we know our magnesium level dips down below the 1350 because we start seeing some weird algae starting to grow out, and it's like, okay. But I don't ever let that happen. I make my employee, he has to test my water Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then little does he know, I'm in there in between on Tuesday and Thursday. I'm doing my own testing just to make sure that things are exactly. You can never be too. You can never check your water enough. I mean, I should be testing it twice a day, to be honest with you. But with we use calcium reactors.
Okay, that was actually a question that was up. If you use calcium reactor or 2-part.
We have to. I mean, if I used a two-part solution, I mean, I
Gallons and
wouldn't go
gallons and
broke.
gallons.
I wouldn't go, I wouldn't go broke, but it would put a damper on the pocketbook. I mean,
Mhm.
when we were doing a two-part, we just started doing the calcium reactors. We put them online. I think it was probably 3 months before Indonesia shut down,
Mhm.
and I couldn't believe how much money we saved because we were going through 24 kilograms of a real alkalinity buffer, not just soda ash or sodium bicarbonate. It was actually a combination of soda ash, sodium bicarbonate.
Oh, that's like freeze frame on that one. Hopefully Chris comes back in a sec.
And then
There you go.
Rich, Devin, you there?
Yeah, yeah, there we go. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, we froze up there for a second.
Yep.
Were you able to hear me too?
Yeah, so you said doing like real alkalinity, not just soda ash, and then you cut out.
Yeah, I mean, just soda ash, it works, but in time, you know, think about what soda ash is. It's the final ingredient in mixing concrete. Um, and I've been to homes with massive aquariums that just dose soda ash on a regular basis, and they're like, we have no flow in our tank. It's only 2 years old, and so let's take a pipe and cut. Oh, by the way, your ball valves don't turn after a while because they get binded inside there. Their sand turned into a brick because
That's
it
why
just
that
turned into,
happens.
huh?
I've never experienced that, but I've heard of people saying when their sand bed turns into like a rock, and I've never seen that in person or had it happen to me. So I've always been like, how does that happen? It all makes sense now.
I had a guy that he was actually it was a friend of mine who was a service had major big service accounts, and one of his accounts was a 2,500 gallon tank, and the company that installed it a year into it, a 3 ton chiller in an air conditioning house couldn't keep up with a 2,500 gallon tank, and I'm like, no, something's wrong here. I've got
Mhm.
3 ton chillers on 2,000 gallons, and I don't have air conditioning keeping my tanks cooler, and I have no problems keeping the temperature 76 degrees.
Mhm.
So I went and helped the guy out, and he didn't believe a word I was saying. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, not that I want to see, your wife get into the aquarium, but she gets in the tank every day and wipes the calcium buildup off. I said, get in there and grab underneath your rock work and see if you can pull a brick of concrete out for me. And he pulled out a brick about this big. I was like, well, there you go. All you have is soda ash in the garage to dose your tank for alkalinity. I said, so I told you it was going to create concrete. Well, your sand is concrete. I said, now you got to replace all your sand. I
That's
said, your
crazy.
rocks bind it up. You need new plumbing. You need
Mhm.
new ball valves. I mean, everything's got to be replaced. The company installed a second 3 ton chiller to make up for the literally. I opened up their barrel and the chiller barrel and looked inside, and the coil was white. You couldn't even see the titanium. It was covered in I
Wow.
call it concrete. So make sure when you're doing an alkalinity buffer that you're actually using a real alkalinity buffer. That's
Yep.
what I call it. It's got 4 parts to it, or even 3 parts:
Mhm.
soda ash, sodium bicarbonate, sodium tetraborate. And again, I don't know why, but I'm drawing a blank on the fourth one, which is also one of the binding,
I've
which
only
actually,
used the first two, so you're already a level beyond what I've done.
well,
Yeah.
I use, I'm very picky with the products that I put into my systems. And uh, the company I used to use, I don't deal with them anymore because the owner was bought out, and I don't think things are the same. I'm not mentioning any names, but I ended up having to try to find somebody else that I trusted to make the product in the
Mhm.
quality that I was looking for. All anhydrous materials. I don't use anything that is dihydrous or septahydrous or sexahydrous, because what's in 1 molecule to 6 molecules of water in a sexahydrous, a septahydrous is 1 to 7.
Mhm.
What's in the water? You
Yeah.
can test it. You'll find out what it is. I mean, I can tell you horror stories of people getting cheap magnesium chloride crystals that look like little water crystals, and
Yeah.
they crush them up and put them in some RO water, and they test for ammonia. Ammonia's.
Hmm. Crazy.
I've had them find copper. I've had them find iron, all kinds of weird things in that less pure material. Is it going to work? Yes, but when you break it down, you're paying for
Well,
what 6 parts of that is water. So all that weight, you're not
mhm.
getting what you pay for.
I guess the other question is, it's going to work short term, but long term, how much of that stuff builds up in your system and has future potential issues of all that extra iron and that random, contaminants?
I honestly believe that in a smaller aquarium environment, it's not as much of a problem
Hmm.
because of the fact that, most people are doing fairly decent sized water changes on their systems. So it's not allowing for the ionic imbalance to build.
Hmm.
And that's what happens is you got ionic imbalance and it causes things to precipitate out in different ways. And one of the precipitate ways is to actually form that concrete brick of your sand or to form on the inside of your pipes and, slowly restrict them down to
Choke it over
nothing.
time.
I mean, I've seen it happen over many, many years in some tanks. But I think in most cases, it's not really that big of an issue.
Hmm.
Can it be? Yes. Can it cost you, saving money here can cost you a lot of money down the road. And
Hmm.
I've always been wanting to buy the best that I can possibly get my hands on when it comes to additives for my aquariums.
Yeah.
And for the aquaculture side of it, I think it's super important.
Okay. Speaking of mixing stuff, Richard was saying back in the day, he goes, ask him about making his own salt.
who's this? Richard?
Richard. Yeah.
Oh, what's up, Richard? Man, I miss my salt. Although I have to say that Julian Sprung's Accuracy One has filled that void for me. When I had my own salt, it was called 26. It didn't last very long. We're not going to go into details on that, Richard. Some people know the story, some people don't. It is what it is. I'm actually perfectly fine with it the way it is. It would have just been another aspect to my life that would have made things even harder than what they already are. But the salt that we had formulated was tweaked. A friend of mine got the formula out of a textbook, and then he tweaked it from there to balance it ionically for the parameters that I wanted, because the textbook formula was for natural seawater.
Okay.
And we wanted it to be, because as hobbyists, if they're getting it at a 7.6 DKH out of the box, it's harder for them to justify a day later it being 7.4.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather have it be a little higher at like 8.3, so that way when they do that water change, it's not going to fall below natural seawater levels, which could stress your corals out.
Okay.
And it was completely ionic balanced with
Nice.
the adjustments that we made to it. We had to adjust the chloride, the sulfate, and I mean there were so many things that he did to it, and it was just amazing salt. I loved it.
Would you do it again?
Millions filled the void. Was that?
Would you do it again? Go back to it? Or is it too
Oh my
much work?
gosh! If I wouldn't have to worry about what went on the last time, I'd put that on the market in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because I see great growth now that we're using nothing but the Accuracy One. But between the 26 salt and Accuracy One, I was going with all kinds of different stuff, and it just wasn't getting what I wanted out of it, And the fact that Julian's meticulous in what he does, and I know he's putting the top-notch product on the market, and he's not going to spare any expenses. He's going to make sure there's no corners cut. I can trust that we go through a pallet of salt every month, 36 boxes of salt, pretty much every month in our system with what we do. So yeah, it's to farm the corals, I want only the best going in. The lifeblood of those corals, what keeps them going is the water, the parameters. Yes. And you can't ever skimp on that aspect of your reef aquarium, or that frag that you bought from that company that charged you $200 for it. Really, you should have bought a $30 frag from the store down the road and bought an expensive box of salt. Make sure that you got good salt water in your aquarium. There's salts that have been out for 50 years or more that they work. They've been proven they work, but for me, it's not good enough.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. And a lot of people probably cheap out on, save the $10 on salt, but we'll spend a fortune on a frag, which is kind of funny when you put it that way.
Yeah. It honestly, I can't wrap my head around that. I can't. I just don't understand it. Never will. And it is what it is. People do what they do, and it's unfortunate because when the product that you are adding to your aquarium, if there does become an ionic imbalance or there is a problem with that inferior product, there's an impurity in there or something that does cause a problem for that $200 frag or that 20 or 30 frags that you spent, $3,000 on,
Hmm.
the salt the salt could have prevented some of that
Yeah.
possibly. So, I mean, I always say buy the best and worry
Preventative.
about your corals later.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Guys, got to get to these before I forget about them. All right. So Chris was asking, because you're mentioning the atmosphere's oxygen, have you ever considered using an oxygen bell in his RRAS system like commercial aquaculture facilities use?
No, I have not. We honestly, we've had when I had the Florida Aquaculture Lab out a few years ago, we had an issue with the Apolomictes king eye angelfish that we took to Reefapalooza, and they came out and they were trying to help us save this animal because it was great, and then all of a sudden it just started going downhill fast, and we couldn't figure out what happened to it. And they wanted to check the oxygen level, and I had them going around and check the oxygen levels of all my coral systems, and they were through the roof.
Hmm.
They were like,
Nice.
wow,
Well,
So
given
go
that
ahead.
you're kind of half outside anyways, that probably helps a lot. Like you don't have that CO2 buildup as much as you would in like a contained building.
Very true, very true.
Hmm.
But when you're running a liter of effluent from your calcium reactor into your system every minute at a pH of 6.6,
A liter a
um,
minute. That's a good chunk.
seriously, it's literally a liter a minute and I test it periodically just to make sure my media is still good. But
Hmm.
we're running at about 20 DKH out of the unit, out of the reactor, and we keep our levels pretty much stable at 8.3.
Nice.
But the reason why it's the pH is at 6.6 is because of course, you have to inject the CO2 into the reactor itself.
Hmm.
And so there's CO2 in that going into my system. So I was like, everybody was like, I'm talking to Julian. I'm like, what do I do for removing the CO2? He's like, oh, just get a CO2 scrubber. I'm like, well, that's another piece of dang equipment I got to put on my aquarium. And, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, well, what's the biggest exporter of CO2 in your system?
Hmm.
Your protein skimmer.
Yeah.
So I got the idea to run the effluent into my protein skimmer.
Hmm.
And I was worried that, okay, it's going to work, but what's the pH still going to be coming out of the effluent of the protein skimmer? And our system's running around 8.3, sometimes up as high as 8.4. And coming out of the protein skimmer, we were at 8.1
Nice.
after 6.61 liter per minute going into it. And I was like, hey, that's good enough for me. I didn't pay anything for, I bought, what, 4 PVC parts. It cost me about
I'm
$3.
gonna try that now. I drip into the same chambers, but I'm gonna run a little tube down just right before the intake and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that too. That's perfect. You have it go right into the intake,
I'm
mix
curious.
with the air mixed in.
Hmm.
You'll be amazed at what that will do. It'll keep your
Nice.
pH from ever dropping below where you want it to be.
So you said you keep your tanks around 8.1. I think someone just asked that question a few minutes ago. What do you keep your pH at?
Oh, my pH 8.3. I try
8.3.
to keep it at 8.3, 8.4, and the only time we have an issue with that is in the winter time. Down here in Florida, we don't really have to do much with heating,
Hmm.
but nighttime we do have heat pumps on our systems, and the key there with the heat pump when it actually goes to heat mode, heat is released from the water so much faster than keeping it cool.
Hmm.
So our heat pumps are perfect for chilling. Even when
Hmm.
it's 100 degrees outside, we stay steady at 76 degrees. But in the winter, when we get down below 55 degrees ambient temperature outside, the heat pumps have a hard time keeping it at 75 degrees because that's when
Hmm.
we have our heat pumps actually kick into heat mode. They at 75 degrees. And then, the first time it happened to me, we were at like 52 degrees overnight one night for like 4 hours. And I came
Hmm.
in the morning and I was at 73 degrees in my coral systems. It didn't scare me because corals can handle that. But,
Hmm.
what am I going to do if, we go
It's
into the 40s,
too crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we get into the 40s on, occasions down here.
You
Not
get
very
that
cold yet.
cold in Florida?
Oh my gosh, we had one winter we had it was down as low as that was just only 2 years ago. It was 20.
Oh, 20 something. That sounds chilly. Back to frozen.
They do nothing,
Huh.
absolutely nothing for you. So
Mm-hmm.
that was quite interesting. We had to tarp everything. We had to put tarps up over the entire raceways,
Yeah.
and
Just to
that kept
hold the
all the
heat
heat
in.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but so back to the pH question. In the wintertime when we have to cover our main coral mats at nighttime, we use insulation board
Mm-hmm.
that you would just hang up in your home on the studs and put drywall over top of it.
Yep.
It's 3/4 inch insulation board, and we sit that over top so it keeps it sealed so that it holds that heat in for us, and our heat pumps don't have to work as hard.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem with that is we do have issues with the
Gas
pH does
exchange.
drop,
Yeah.
and I was never I was never somebody that used protein skimmers. I never
Mm-hmm.
used protein skimmers, and we every year we had issues with algae outbreaks in all of our coral systems. So I said, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to buy the protein skimmers because that'll help to keep oxygen in the water. It'll help, keep things more stable, and it helped tremendously. So now I don't worry as much when we're covering the systems up, and actually the pH does stay. Never goes down to 8.1 anymore, but it goes up to about 8 stays up to about 8.2. But then during the day when we open everything back up, we're back up to 8.3, 8.4.
Nice. So you also said a minute ago you keep your tanks around 76. Well, that's cooler than most people are more around the 78-ish. Is there any difference keeping it a bit cooler for you, or is it just
I
because
think
that's natural, it works?
I think it's a huge difference. I mean,
Yeah.
I have the privilege of being able to talk to divers that collect my corals,
Mm-hmm.
and to hear them say it was cold when they were diving. I mean, what do you mean cold? It was like what, 75-degree water? He's like, no, we were collecting A cans and it was 64-degree water. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
64 degrees. He's like, well, you got to think about it. That's A cans. The majority of the A cans are okay. Micro lords.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, didn't mean to say A can.
I still call them
Um,
A-cans.
the majority of the microlords are collected on the southern edge of the barrier reef.
Mm-hmm.
So with the water temperatures can get cooler down there, a lot cooler. So they can handle much cooler water. And one of the things I found out was Scolemia australis, or should we say Homophilia australis now? I guess I don't know. I can't keep
I
up
keep
with
changing the names. Hard to keep up.
it. Hasn't been adopted 100% yet, but it is,
Mm-hmm.
but it isn't. So but I had a customer that bought. This was probably 10 years ago. We brought in this triple-headed master scolie, absolutely stunning. My
Mm-hmm.
customer that purchased it, his customer um, kept their tank at like 82 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was doing well, and the coral was doing great. And all of a sudden, it just started bleaching slowly.
Hmm.
And I asked them what the temperature was, and they said it was 82. I said drop it to 76, and I said give it a lot of phyto, give it a lot of food, give it some TLC, and I said it'll come back. Well, she didn't listen to me, and it continued to get worse and worse and worse to the point where all you could see was the dark ring on the inside of each of the heads of the purple ring, and then
Mm-hmm.
very faint pink and very faint like yellow. She got frantic,
Mm-hmm.
and she started to listen to me, and they bought a chiller and was feeding the coral regularly. Well, it took about 4 months, but that coral came back and is still to this day alive because she now keeps her tank at 76 degrees.
Yeah.
And this is from my customer telling me that she thanked me for, because that coral cost twice or three times what the chiller did.
Yeah.
Now, the electric bill was more, but when you love corals, there's no expenses that can be spared. I mean, I don't
You
spare
do what you got to
expenses.
do. Well, hey,
Yeah.
you've actually inspired me to drop my temp because mine's like 78 and a half. I'm going to drop it down to 77, which is going to
Yeah, I mean,
save me electricity because I'm always heating my tanks. I don't have to worry about cooling it ever. It's always heated.
well, because of the fact that, even when I was in Bali diving
Mm-hmm.
with Vincent Chalice, we were in the lagoon, and, the water temperature at the surface was like cool, a nice 80 degrees. And I dove down deep in the lagoon at the gonnies that were like this big, red gonnies.
Nice. Love it.
Wish we could get them.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got down in there, I was like, oh my gosh, it's cold. and it was probably low 70s. So, even in the middle of the tropics, the upwellings, depending on where you are, you can get really cold, currents coming through. So I feel that a 76 degree keeps the coral's metabolism more in check.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have, and the warmer your temperature, the higher metabolism, bottom line. So
Yeah.
you need more light, you need more food
Mm-hmm.
to keep them happy. The lower the temperature, the easier it is to keep them happy. And you don't have to feed as much, even though feeding them, they love it. They love you for it. But it allows us to also run our photo periods for 8 hours max. I mean, we run our photo period for 8 hours, and we have our max photo period on our acros at 4 hours. I mean, literally 4 hours. And Devin,
That's it,
you've got pictures of those. That's it. We run 750 par in between the meadow halides. It's like 650, but right underneath them it's about 750. And literally they only get that high intensity for about 4 hours a day. Well, it is only 4 hours a day, and the rest of the time they're about 180 par.
So it's low, crazy high par, and then back to low again.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's exactly how we do it. It works.
One of the interesting things, one of the Coral Lab studies they showed, like different comparisons where they're comparing tanks with shorter duration, really high intensity, or longer duration, lower density, and it kind of evened out for a lot of corals. But there's certain ones where there'd be different growth patterns. Like some of the Monty cats, for instance, would curl more on the high par, on the low par they would just spaced out more. It's kind of interesting. Like other than the growths, I mean, you can kind of evened out if you calculated how much light energy they're getting from the day. It's kind of interesting how you can play with it.
It is very interesting, and I remember one of the things that, that Jake was mentioning when he was here. He's like, being able to keep SPS, LPS, everything in between and softies all in the same system and keep everything happy. It's an art. I mean, it really is. To keep everything extremely happy, it can be very difficult, but we kind of came up with a method of doing it by just having the most intensity right down the center of the 6 foot wide tank and 12 feet long. And then that's only, we use Lumen Max Elite reflectors. I bought every one I could get my hands on because I'm afraid I'm never going to get them again. But they're only a 12 inch by 12 inch reflector. So we get about 2 foot area that gives us the par that we're looking for, in which where we grow all of our acros. Everything else on that other, 2 foot to the right and 2 foot to the left, it's got literally 2 T5 bulbs lighting them up. That's it. Or 4 T5 bulbs. And where the Montes are, we use a 6 bulb and an 8 bulb fixture. But for the most part, all of our LPS are getting, at the edge of the tub, we're probably down as low as like 80 par. And you wouldn't believe it, but they look amazing. The corals grow really well, but there's a balance that you have to have. If you're going to run, you can grow acros and get them absolutely stunning on a low par environment. But if you're not feeding them or keeping your nutrient levels a little higher than what the norm would be, the corals aren't going to be as happy. So in a low par, higher nutrient environment, you can have acros look absolutely stunning. They're not going to grow as fast. I've proven that with the studies that we've done. That's why I went back to, cooking them, as much as I can give them. I'm also debating whether or not to put some Iwasaki 65Ks up to really get them cooking.
No kidding.
Like, why would you put that ugly white light up or yellow light up? Well,
they grow fast.
Oh my gosh. And, they grow some corals, that's for sure. So,
just with my LEDs, I've experimented with that where I crank the whites for 3 or 4 hours of the photo period just to try and do that little cooking. And it seems to be bringing a little more color, a little more growth out of it. So
it does. You'd be surprised what it'll do, especially for SPS corals, and that's, LPS corals. I mean, I've had LPS corals live in my packing table, which I turned into a place to hold corals because I can't stop buying corals. But I tested the par in there the other day where I had my Symphilia wilsoni that we have, which are, oh my gosh, they're stunning right now. I'm debating whether or not to start putting them on the farm because some of the ones I have, I'm just like, good Lord, if I can grow those things out. Might have to do an experiment with one and see what happens with it. But we were at like 75 par, and they're just blown up like balloons. They were kind of bleachy when they came in. I'm already starting to notice more color back in them. But I've got lords growing there, 75 par, no issues. They look amazing. So it's just a matter of balancing things out and feeding properly if you have
Yeah.
a low light environment.
Okay, so feeding definitely important. I mean, low light even more so. High light and do a little bit less, but either way, feed your corals. You'll get better colors. They'll be happier. How about flow? What are you running for flow in your tanks?
We got a lot of flow.
Yeah,
We have I use in my farm systems we use Dolphin Amp Masters 6250s.
big pumps.
Yeah, I have one on a closed loop and one as a return,
Hmm.
and then I have there's five Jabeo. No. Sorry, I can't believe I just said Jabeo. Uh, Gyri
Yeah.
280s,
Hmm.
and one Octopulse 4. So we're 9, 40, 45. In a 1,000 gallon tank, we're at about 60,000 gallons an hour
Okay.
in water flow.
Hmm. A good
So
chunk.
a lot of flow. I mean, you can never duplicate what the ocean can throw at you. I
Hmm.
don't care what anybody says. I mean, it's not the same. It never will be the same. But the great thing is the technology that came out with all these different wave pumps. I mean, it gives us that opportunity to
Mix
give
it up.
all those different, crossing currents, and it's as much crossing currents as you can possibly get, and as much wave action as you can get
Hmm.
is what I recommend. Do what you can afford. There's a lot of wave pumps out there that aren't going to break your bank. Are they going to last as long as some of those better ones? Who knows? I don't mess with
Yeah.
them. I'm not on a hobbyist level,
Hmm.
but there's a lot out there that you can use, and definitely. I always say this: don't get a big return pump from your sump. Get a small one, and then
Hmm.
make your flow with wave pumps in your aquarium,
Yeah.
because for one, you don't have to worry about micro bubbles in your sump, which is always a pain in the rear end because I was always about the biggest and the craziest return pump I could get. And yeah, battle
Just
micro bubbles ever since day one on all my tanks. And now I'm like totally the opposite of what I used to be.
they're gone. Yeah. Well, I think that was back in the day when you didn't have awesome return pumps like we have now. So
Very true.
you relied on your return pump for your flow for a good chunk of it. Yep. Okay, another question that we haven't touched
Yes.
on yet. What about trace elements? Do you dose anything on the trace side aside from the calcium reactor to
Well,
supplement
it's
it?
funny you bring that up. Josh, if he's still listening, he
Mhm.
will come to find that, we had a little bit of an issue with the scrubbers not pulling the point 0.2 per day that we had consistently for 6 straight months.
Mhm.
And in the farm, we don't do massive water changes. I mean, if we do, a 50-gallon water change on that on that system on a weekly basis, that's pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, so what we found was that because the scrubber was eating up all the nutrients from all the food we were feeding, that it was eating up all of our trace minerals as well. We started dosing the trace minerals about 3 weeks ago, and what a difference!
Mhm.
I had a 5-gallon bucket of replenish, and I went through that so fast. I'm like, okay, I need to find somebody that can make me some concentrated trace minerals because it, on the level we're at, it goes up so fast when you're using a hobbyist grade material. So now I've got a handful of people. Whoever comes to me first with the 64 plus trace minerals in it at the
In the
concent.
5 gallon buckets.
Yeah, but concentrated enough so that it doesn't go in a month or
Mhm.
2 weeks. Um, so yeah, definitely would dose trace minerals. There's a lot of different ones out there that work really well. I know Julian Sprung, Two Little Fishies, has a good one out there. I go back
Mhm.
to Julian because I use all of Julian stuff. Julian formulates what I want, how I want it. I just tell him what I'm looking for, and he makes it for me.
Nice.
So some of the stuff I get from him is actually there's only one thing that I've been talking to him about. He hasn't done it for me yet, but it's the only thing that he's not going to actually have on his product line. He's going to
Mhm.
have it for me so that I can use it because I believe in it.
Mhm.
Um, but definitely dose trace minerals. Just be careful. You don't want to OD.
Don't overdo it.
Do ICP tests frequently if you're dosing trace minerals, or use a good salt and do water changes, and your trace
Mhm.
minerals will come back for you with the water changes. So that's the
It
other way you can do it.
it's true. Like everyone, I've tried the being a slacker on water changes and everything else. But the tank's always just even little ones, like even like a 5 gallon bucket, like every week or two when I'm motivated, things just look a little bit perkier, a little bit happier. It's
Oh
those
yeah.
little things that you're probably not dosing or adding in.
Yep. No, it's amazing what getting a good ionically balanced salt will have all those minerals in it too for you. Where some salts they're not going to have that in for you. You get what you pay for.
Hmm. It's
It
true.
is what it is. So some people don't have the issues, and then other people have the issues, and they have to just buy a supplement and add it to it because they're using a salt that wouldn't have that in per se.
Hmm.
So but yeah, it's
All right.
definitely need to add them.
All right. So since we were talking to little fishies, how about aminos or aqua powers? Do you deal with any type of aminos to your tanks?
No, I've got my own aminos.
Ah.
I use an amino acid that was formulated by a buddy of mine who's a marine scientist. I get it. The stuff doesn't last very long, as most people know. It's about a
Hmm.
6 month shelf life once it's in solution.
Hmm.
So I have enough to mix 1 liter in a powdered form, which gives me 9 of the 11 essential trace elements that are in found in seawater. And
Nice.
because 9 of the 11 are there, the other two get created by I don't remember what it is, but they are created in the water column. I used to have all this stuff in my head, and it was like I talked about it all the time, and it's just like everything. When that went away, I stopped talking about it. So I got
There's
to go
lots
look at my
lots of stuff
notes.
going on. Hmm.
Exactly. So we dose amino acids, but the amino acids we dose are so powerful that we literally dose a half a mil
Oh wow.
3 times a week in a
Okay.
2,200 gallon system.
Wow.
And the experiment we did when we started dosing was what the recommendation was, but once a week.
Hmm.
And LPS corals, they were looking amazing. You put the aminos went in the next day. That same LPS coral, the polyp was gone, and we're going,
Really?
what happened? And you can OD your trace or your amino acids, and it can be very very bad for your corals. So Acro Power is I hear nothing but good things about it. I'm
Hmm.
sure when I run out of the I've got enough to last me for probably 10 years though. So unless it goes bad as a powder, which I have to call my buddy and ask him because I can't remember what he said. Um, but the Acro Power, everybody talks about it. It's good stuff. I mean, I've got multiple
Hmm.
stores that I know that use it on a regular basis and they swear by it.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it if you have SPS, especially. Definitely be careful, be cautious, but dose aminos for sure.
Hmm. I've been a bit of a slacker on that. I kind of go through it in phases. I should just put on a doser one of these days. But one of my buddies who he swears by it, he says the moment he runs out like his curls, you can notice a difference when he starts adding it again. And
Yep.
so,
I
yep.
would never put aminos on a doser. Mm-mm-mm-mm. If
Well, you're
that
supposed.
doser decides it's not going to be working right and it decides to dump some in your aquarium, it's gone. See ya. Bye bye. All those beautiful corals.
Yeah. So okay. So when you dose too much, you said your LPS had a bit of an issue. Did the acros or did anything else notice an issue when overdosing it?
I didn't notice the issues with any of the SPS corals.
Okay.
And I believe me, I looked at everything, but I couldn't attribute the reason why these corals bailed their polyps
Hmm.
to anything but that, because that's all we did different was put the aminos in. That's when I think it was supposed to be 1 mil, and we backed it off to a 1/4 mil just to be safe. And then we slowly bumped it up to that half mil 3 times a week. And that seems to be our happy medium.
Hmm.
I'm afraid to do it every day because everything looks so good. I'm like, it isn't broke, don't fix it. Don't do anything. Just keep
It'll be
doing
like
what you're doing.
a quarter of a mil a day. It's the tiniest little bit. That is crazy concentration. That's all it is.
It is. It is. And I have the what I get in the packet.
Mhm.
I actually divide it into quarters because we're only dosing small amounts. But I do have 5 2,000 gallon systems. I get a 1/4 mil a day, or every other day basically. Um, we don't use 250 mLs of it in 6 months or
Yeah, that's
um,
crazy.
3 months. So yeah, I mean, I mix it up, quarter
Potent,
batch at a time, so that way I'm
potent,
not it's not going bad.
potent stuff. That's awesome. Love it. Sorry, just quickly skimming, making sure I didn't miss any questions. All right, so 76 degrees. I've had like 3 people say they're dropping their temperature now.
I swear by it. Anybody that's going, you're going to notice such a huge difference in your corals. They're going to be
Mhm,
so like LPS, like especially Scoli australis,
mhm.
microlords, prism fabias. Oh my lord, Gonastria palawanensis, dragon soul, crown
Mhm.
jewel, whatever you want to call it. They blow up like balloons at a lower temperature.
Yeah. Okay, so since you have a bazillion different corals, do you have any favorites?
Their polyp a lot more
Oh,
than what
no.
you've ever noticed before if you
Yeah.
keep your temperature lower at 76 degrees. Well,
Okay. All right. Okay. Question for you. Since you have so many corals, what is your favorite
yep.
types? What is your favorites? Like, what are the ones that you're like, ah, I always love that one.
I have to go back to my first love on corals, which was acropora. I mean, sticks. It's what
Yeah.
started me in this industry.
Any
You
specific
know,
subtype or classification?
you know what? I don't even know what it's called. Nobody can identify it. It's got it. I think my favorite right now. It kind of shifts because there's always something that pops out that catches my eye.
Hmm.
We have the ACI Pink Panther that was just launched this week. Um,
Googling this.
the people that collected it, and then you got the experts like Vincent, and you got Jake. You have Nick DeSantos over at Ultra Corals. I even have Don Gilson. And all these guys are like, it's a mystery table. We cannot identify it, and it is so unique.
Hmm.
It reminds me of a. Most people don't see it like I did because I remember the colony when it came in. It reminded me of a tightly branched tabling Acropora echinata
Hmm. Hmm.
because the coral lights were, you know, I don't know, the size of a piece of lead in a pencil,
Hmm.
and then they were really long,
Nice.
and that one polyp sticking out of there, but then down where the coral light came out of the base was more polyps, and
Hmm.
this coral
That's
is
kind of
like
cool
hot.
looking.
What's that?
That's cool. Send me a photo of this one later. I'm curious now. That
Actually,
sounds really cool.
if you want to see it, go to ACI Aquaculture's Facebook page, and
Okay.
we have a photo that we launched. Jake Adams posted it on Reef Builders on Instagram and their Facebook page.
Hmm.
It's a huge hit for us. I mean, everybody's. I had people that were not planning on buying from me this week because they didn't have the funds to, and they ended up putting an order in just so they could get their 3 Pink Panthers because they were afraid they were all going to be gone until the next release.
Here, let me just pull this up for a second. That is a beauty. That is definitely a beautiful coral. I don't blame you.
Polyps, I mean, the picture doesn't give it justice. I mean, the
Hmm.
polyps on it are so red and they extend so much that you can't even see the coral lights of the coral. It's just this fuzzy, shaggy, bright red. And then when the polyps go in, it's the pink body.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so and it was
Looks
grown from a nub this big. A
beautiful.
year and 4 months, that colony, that's what you see. That's a year and 4 months of growth here at ACI.
And this is why this hobby is addicting. Did
You know
it
what?
did the nub look like it when you started?
Well, no, see, we again going back to what is aquaculture, what is farmed, what we started the company selling chop shop acro frags. I bought
Hmm.
Fiji acros years ago. We made frags, we healed them, let them puddle into the plugs. So I never got away from that. We still do that, and we offer acro frag packs. And what we do is we take wild colonies and we cut them down, and you know then what's left over is this ugly nothing.
Hmm.
It's pink, it has no coralites left on it. It's got all these white cut marks on it.
Yeah.
So what we do is then we cut them down and fit them onto a tile.
Hmm.
And so I remember the coral extremely well.
No, cut out. Come back.
Because when we sold
There we
them
go.
at the Great Barrier Reef to see this coral, you couldn't tell that it was the Pink Panther because it wasn't pink when we got it. It was
Hmm.
green and red. And
It
now it has no pink or no green in it. It's just red and pink.
it
So
amazes me. One thing I find really cool is how
I
much
lost you.
corals. Oh, okay, back, back.
Go, Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah, you keep breaking up there for a second.
Yeah, you did too for a sec. So one thing that always amazes me is I find it really interesting how much a coral can change over time. Like I bought one that was a greeny yellow, and now it doesn't even have yellow. It's like purples and reds. It's like every other color. You're like, how did that even come out of the same coral? Like it's crazy.
It blows your mind. I mean, to see um, corals when they're conditioned to an aquarium environment. It goes back to doing farming. And the reason why we want to, promote actual true coral farming is because when we farm that coral, we've seen it grown from all these little frags, and then we frag the frags, and then we
Hmm.
frag those frags, and we're talking years of growth and captivity. And by the time it gets put on the market, we know that it's going to hold this color.
Hmm.
It might not look that same way when we got it in, or maybe it still does, but you know, it does. It truly amazes me the differences from a wild collected coral that we say, wow, we have to have that for the farm. And then we take a photo of it.
Hmm.
4 years later, we take a photo of what we're offering for sale. I'm like,
Not the
what?
same coral.
Exactly. But
Hmm.
that's the thing about what it's never a dull moment. You're always learning something new. If you have a desire to learn and you want to keep these animals alive, I mean, it's I don't go to work every day. I don't feel
It's
like I
fun.
go to work every day. I love what I do. It's like
Hmm.
I want to be there to make sure my babies are okay. I mean, I've got tens of thousands of babies at my farm. They're my babies. They're my wife's
Hmm.
babies. They're
Yeah.
they're part of the family. And one of the things that is very important for us is making sure that they are going to be represented and going to be able to continually hold what they represent from ACI to the consumer.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Conditioned to aquarium environment is one of the huge things about farming corals that I think is very important for people to understand. Because I mean, if you get a coral from somebody and it's called aquacultured, but it's really a chop shop, and 3 months down the road it had some fancy smancy name on it to market it and make money on it,
Hmm.
and it was only in captivity for a month, 2 months. I mean,
It's
that's
gonna
not
change.
culture. I mean,
No, not at
it's a
all.
joke to me.
Hmm.
That's what another thing gonna point out. Jake and I barely touched this over at the water box. He had notes and he's pointing to me. He's like, "We could go over this," and we didn't get a chance to.
Hmm.
And he did it at the very end. And he's like, and I'm gonna say this too to everybody: buy the coral because you love it. Don't buy a picture. Don't buy a fancy name. All you're going to do is pay way more money than what you need to pay for that same coral that you can probably buy somewhere else. Now,
Hmm.
if you're going to buy a fancy name, tell them to tell you about the name. Why is it named this? How long has it been in captivity? How many frag generations out of the wild is it in captivity? Guess what? If somebody buys an aquacultured coral or a farmed coral from ACI, I can go back into my SKUs. My wife
Hmm.
was the one that started this, and
Nice.
God bless her for it because she had a vision that I had the vision, but she had an even deeper vision
She brought it
of,
to life.
yeah, she did. I mean, she brought that to life. I farm the corals.
Hmm.
That's all I want to do. She can do that part of it, and I'm glad she does. She loves the corals too. She's out there with me. She's like, "What are you gonna frag today?" I didn't. I fragged up gonnies today, red gonnies. So red gonnies will be in the market in a couple months
Hmm.
after they heal up. But you know, we have documentation from the first four fragments of Fascination for Vites in 2015, and then we have, okay, those four fragments were turned into 16 fragments. Those
Hmm.
16 were turned into 96. Those 96 were turned into, over 400 or around
Hmm.
400. We launched them on the market. It took
Yeah.
us that long, and she's got everything in detail so
It's
that
a
we can prove that we farm this coral. It's
it's
not a
amazing you
chop.
track it that much. That's
Oh
crazy.
my
It's
gosh.
cool though. It's interesting that you do.
She's got data. She was telling me, and I think I mentioned on the water box live video, was we had like 37,000. I misquoted that. It was, I think it was, I said 37, and it was 30, more like 34,000 frags we sold of Rainbow Montipora since we got our original 10 frags in
Wow.
2013.
Huh.
So you want to talk about farming corals? That's farming corals.
Hmm.
Do I get wild ones in? Yes, I do. But you know what I do with them? I sell the colony whole. I
Hmm.
already have it on the farm. I don't need it again. So let
Yeah.
somebody buy it and do what they want with it.
You already have tons of offspring.
Exactly, exactly.
Yep.
So that's 34,000 babies that are hopefully all still living. But that's the unfortunate truth about this is not everybody can keep all this stuff alive long term because of getting misinformation from this person. Stick to one person's advice, and your tank will be successful.
Hmm.
Mix a whole bunch of people's ideas together, you're in for a disaster, and you might as well just forward the money to me because I can use it.
Yeah, pretty much. And make sure whoever ever is giving you advice has a nice tank and they know what they're doing.
Exactly, exactly. Just make sure you trust the person that you get, that you're taking the tank advice from.
Nope.
God, I wish I had the ability to go on a forum and give people advice. But I just don't have the time of the day to do it. I love that kind of thing, helping hobbyists, grow.
Mhm. Well,
So,
I think we had up to 92 in here at one time, so helping lots right now.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Awesome.
I had some other things I wanted to touch on with the aquaculture
Okay.
side of it. We talked about conditioned and grown for aquariums.
Hmm.
Again, I think that's very important for hobbyists to understand the difference between a farmed coral that has been conditioned, that has been proven for years in captivity,
Hmm.
versus a propagated, chop shop fragment or conditioned frag or healed frag or whatever fancy name you make it any different than being a chop shop frag. In
Hmm.
reality, it's just a matter of whether how long was that coral cut? Was it cut for a week, 2 weeks, or was it cut, glued, shipped? And a
Hmm.
lot of places do that, and that's one of the reasons why we don't value our fragments cheaper, because we don't let them go, at least for shipping wise, for at least 2 weeks after we cut them. In some species it can be quicker than that because they don't have the heal time, but hobbyists need to understand that when they're looking at a frag, they're not all aquaculture. I would bet that 90% of what they're being offered is just big colonies chopped up and offered as frags.
Hmm.
Um, what we want to do is make sure that every coral that leaves has a reason behind the name, and it's not just put there so that you can charge $1 million for a coral.
Hmm.
I mean, I just became a member of the Euphilia Freaks forum, and everybody's asking the names
Oh,
of
they're
this
nuts
torture
in there.
coral.
They're nuts in that group.
Well, I think I don't know. I thought I was going to get kicked out because I was just going, it's Euphilia glabrescens. Why do you have to have a fancy name on it? Are you trying to make $1 million on the coral? Do you love the coral? If you love the coral, just enjoy the coral. Who
Hmm.
cares what the name is? It doesn't mean anything because in most cases, those torch corals weren't farmed in captivity. Now, some of these torches that were from Indo, yes, people are actually propagating them. And do
Hmm.
they deserve a name? Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you grew that coral from the original mariculture or wild colony you got, and you got multiple heads you can cut off of it, and it's your coral, put a name on it.
Hmm.
It's worthy of a, hey, I farmed it. I know what
Yeah.
it. This head right here, I grew it.
Hmm.
It's got a name. Good. I love that part of it. But if you're taking that wild piece and cutting it and putting the name on it,
Hmm.
sorry, but I have a frown and two thumbs down for that.
Well, the other thing is too, if you have a coral that's been raised in a tank, it's going to more likely keep those colors. It's going to be hardier and less susceptible to stuff. So for whoever's buying it, you're going to be higher chance of success with it, which goes a long way.
Oh, agreed. 100% agreed. You know, um, the fact that we don't use LEDs to grow our corals is actually, I think it's a bonus for the people that are actually going to be buying the corals because they know that they were farmed by us, and I can give them all the back data because of my
Hmm.
wife, Amanda. Thank you.
Hmm.
I can give them all the back data they want and the history of the coral. I've got a I want to put a story behind everything. It's going to take me forever to do it, but all of our aquaculture stuff, I want to have, I know the majority of them. I know if they were a hitchhiker from a Vietnam zoo that was the size of
I'm
the,
gonna come over one day to the farm and randomly point and test you on this.
oh, not a problem. I can no problem. You're going to stump. There's going to be some that I'm not going to be able to tell you on. I know that for a fact. But when you're talking 350 different kinds, I'm pretty good if I remember all
That is
that.
impressive. It really is. Hmm.
But we have, like, the Devil's Eye Monty was literally about the size of my thumb 2 years ago,
Hmm.
and it was brown with yellow polyps, and now it's bright red with yellow polyps, and we've sold. I don't remember. I think we've sold over 1,000 frags of it already, and we just launched it in February, which is pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
and people are loving it and they come back for more of it.
Nice. Love it.
So, oh my gosh, is it really 8:15 already?
Yeah, we can call it quits. I've had you on here for a while,
Hey,
but
I mean, I don't care. I'm game. I'm enjoying this. I
yeah.
mean, you know, we won't go a whole lot longer, but I
Mhm.
know some people are probably getting, the whole thing was to talk about aquaculture, and I think everybody needs to really seriously think about it.
Mhm.
With sexual spawning of corals, which is being done by Jamie Craig's in the UK, which good on you, man,
Awesome.
and that's so awesome how he's figured out how to do these things. They figured out SPS. All right, now we got to figure out, the LPS, the solitary polyp LPS, because they're going to be the ones that when the industry doesn't allow us to import those corals anymore, people are still going to want them. So
Mhm.
how do we actually have them available? And being able to sexually spawn those corals is something that needs to have work done on it. So you have then
Mhm.
F1 generation from sexual, F0, F1, F2, F3. So what is the generations? Did I ask you this over there? What is the definition of the generations of a fragged up coral, asexual reproduction? How do you define it? I
It's technically all growing from the same piece, so it's hard to really define it.
exactly.
Like, if you had a little wild nub and the grew up bigger and you frag that off, I mean, technically that would be a new one if it keeps going like every time you frag it, providing that
Right.
was after the initial one. But yeah, it is a tricky question. I mean, if it spawns, I mean, it's a little easier, but when you're just chopping it off, like if a head grew in captivity, okay, maybe that's one and that one's butted another head in an LPS, then maybe. But yeah, it is hard to define it.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, Amanda is ever since Vincent's speech over at the keynote speaker at MACNA this year,
Hmm.
it kind of lit a fire under our rear ends because nobody's doing anything, and as an industry, we're on the defensive all the time,
Hmm.
and we need to take the fight to them. We don't need to be on the defensive all the time.
Yep.
We need to give them a fight. We need to
Hmm.
come out there with our guns ablazing, and I've got the ammo. I need more people to get the ammo. So, and if you truly are going to be considering yourself an aquaculture facility or a coral farmer, don't take it for granted. Like I took Indonesia corals as an importer for granted. I mean, I really did. Actually,
Hmm.
not just me. Every
Everyone did.
single person in this industry took it for granted, and now we're all behind the eight ball so far that we all need to come together and figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to define what true aquaculture is, and how we're going to go on the offensive with these people trying to shut us down.
Hmm.
Because I personally know for a fact ACI can grow the hell out of some corals, and I know there's a lot of other people out there that are on a level that are maybe at the same level as me, or maybe even on a higher level than me,
Hmm.
that don't do all the data collection that is necessary to be on the offensive. If we don't have all that data, we're always going to be in the defense mode.
Hmm.
But if you have the data, you can go right back at them, and then you can put them in their place, and they have nothing to go on because that's what they're expecting. They're expecting us to be on the defensive,
Hmm.
and so everybody, I can't stress it enough. I mean, if you love corals like I do,
Yes, 12.
Devin does, like
Hmm.
so many other people that are in this business, in this industry, in the hobby, when you frag a coral, what doesn't take much. Set yourself an Excel spreadsheet up and start checking the data on it. Okay, you know what? This coral, I got it on this date. I grew it out. I finally fragged it 3 months later. It was
Hmm.
an acro. I got this favia. I got it on this date. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't frag it for a year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's data. You know,
All
you
right.
fragged it into how many frags? You
I'm gonna
sold
attempt to
three.
start tracking this.
You sold three of them off, and you kept one for yourself.
Hmm.
So you know that's the kind of stuff that we need, especially for like a farmer, American Coral Farmers Association, or Florida Coral Farmers Association, or a worldwide Coral Farmers Association, whatever it is that ends up happening. And again, it has to happen. If it
Hmm.
doesn't happen, awareness of our coral reefs will die with them not allowing us to have them imported anymore. It's like what happened in the Florida Keys, and I, you know, Do I believe that they should have made them off limits and not touchable? Yes, I do to an extent. But Devin, name me a species of coral that comes out of the Florida Keys. Latin name, not a common name.
I got nothing.
No. Okay. And I'll be honest with you,
Yep.
I'm very illiterate on that as well. I mean, I can tell you, you got Dendrogyra, which is, the pillar coral. You got mesophilia. You have copolyphilia. I couldn't name half of the actual species living in the Florida Keys. Why? The government shut it down. You can't touch it. You can't do anything to it. If they just set it up where, okay, our reefs are in decline, but you know what? Let's do something proactive. Let's set up a mariculture farm. We've got these great places down there now doing, farming of corals on the, hanging balls of what are they, the Aquaphora sevicornis and the palmetta and stuff like that. That's all fine and good and great, but why didn't they allow somebody to actually get the permits and licensing to actually farm the corals and replant them back on the wild? I mean, for them to say that microfragging was just developed a couple of years ago by scientists to put the corals back on the coral reef makes me laugh. It's hysterically.
Have they not looked at the hobby for the last 10 years?
Well, that's the thing. Science is science, and they don't want to come together with the hobbyists, or the hobbyists don't want to come together with the scientists. I think it's more the opposite, that scientists don't want to come together with hobbyists, and I understand.
Bridging the two is where a lot of magic happens, because the hobbyists are the ones with all the experience on it.
Exactly. And bringing the hobby and science. Charlie Verone said it back in 2018 at MACNA. Richard back, he's probably still watching here. He had an awesome interview with Charlie, and it started with Charlie and Richard talking about Charlie. When Charlie said, if science and the hobby would come together, we could do amazing things together, even though we're not going to have the controlled environments that they're going to expect and want. Listen, people keep Pacific corals in an aquarium. They don't keep Caribbean corals in an aquarium. Well, neglect the mushrooms, recordias, stuff like that. But they aren't keeping stony corals because we can't have a stony coral in an aquarium in the United States of America. Actually, anywhere in the world, you're not allowed to have a Caribbean species of coral. And because of that, nobody knows anything about them. Yeah. And, science needs to really look at what the hobbyists are doing. And of course, commercial industry, leaders like myself and, Biota and ORA. And there's so many farms out there that do things scientifically per se, but don't have, I'm not a scientist. I was stupid. I dropped out of college and didn't get my degree. It's a piece of paper though.
But you know how to grow coral, and that's at the end of the day what is going to be what helps save everything, right? I mean,
true. I mean, and nothing going against anybody that went to college. I mean, God, I wish I did. I wish I finished. I wish I had my credentials so that I'd actually be maybe the science world would look at me maybe in a different way. I've got friends at the Frost Science Museum. Zach Ransom, he's an awesome guy. He's a biologist, and he calls me. He used to call me for a little bit of advice here and there for on corals and what to do. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's like, he tells me I'm a wealth of knowledge. We complemented each other extremely well with the science background. With I do have a hobbyist background and a mentality. I love corals, and they always come first. Business comes second, and it speaks volumes when you put it that way. I mean, you cannot ever lose focus on what you love if you have a business with living animals. And I think I'm going to leave it at that.
So true. And hey, the more we learn, the more we share. You're inspiring me to actually document and track this more, which I'm going to.
Gosh, that'd be awesome. I would love to be able to call up.
Both my tanks are being upgraded soon, so I'm going to start it as of the new tanks.
Awesome. Hey, I'll be expecting yearly updates.
Likewise.
Oh, I don't know if you want all that. That could be a couple of books.
That's like a month of reading material. Bedtime stories. That would be
nice thing about QuickBooks and Excel, you condense that down quite quickly.
This is true. This is very true. But yeah, no, I mean, hey, the more we know, the better it's going to be for everyone growing the hobby, growing the corals, which is going to be more and more captive bred as time goes on. I mean, that's basically the way it's trending. But it just helps the whole industry as a whole. So love it.
Yes. Well, fingers crossed we'll have Indo someday.
Hopefully.
If not, nope. I'm just going to keep doing what I do and make it better and better and better with what I have, because you can't cry about what you can't get.
Hmm. Perfect. No, I 100% agree. And I thank you for coming on today. I'm definitely going to have you on again because I could easily keep this going for hours and hours and hours.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, for sure. Devin, I appreciate you having me on. We got to thank Josh for getting us together, because that
Yeah,
actually,
definitely.
Josh, thanks, buddy. I did have a
Clearwater
really good
Scrubbers,
time.
Josh, you're still in the chat. Always appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Everybody, you want to remove nutrients from your aquarium? Clearwater Scrubbers. It will save you a ton of money down the road. Initial
Hmm.
expense might be a little too much for some people, but how much do you spend in oil floss? How much do you spend in aluminum oxide? How much do you spend in all these different things that remove nutrients chemically, when a Clearwater Scrubber will do it for you
Yep.
without any problems,
True.
naturally.
Okay, I have to ask one quick question because like four people have asked it. If
Okay.
someone wants to buy corals off you, do they need to have a brick and mortar store or just a license or a home store? Or how would they go about it? What is the requirement? Like four people have asked so far.
This is not going to be a short answer.
Okay.
Put it this way, guys. I understand. Okay, I at one point in my life at ACI Aquaculture, it stands for Amanda, Chris, and Isabel. Now we've got my
Good
son
to know.
Isaac.
Yeah.
That's how I came up with the name, and we didn't have money.
Hmm.
It was just a harebrained idea. I borrowed 10 grand from the Discover card, and I started this business in my garage. I have a soft spot for people that start their business in a garage. But what I don't have a soft spot for is that garage guy undercutting brick and mortar.
Hmm.
If you're going to be in your garage and you're going to try to start your business, because you've got to start somewhere. I mean, I think Apple started in their garage. I think Michelin started in their garage. Hell, Harley Davidson started in their garage. So you got to start somewhere, and I understand that.
Hmm.
But when it comes down to undercutting a brick and mortar store with more overhead than you, I don't particularly care for that, because that was never how I modeled my business. I always made sure
Hmm.
I was more expensive than those wholesalers in LA that had all the extra overhead. And if they had something to say to me, well, your coral's cheaper than. So don't cheapen up yourself.
Hmm.
If you cheapen up what you have in your products, you're never going to get it back. And when you go to become a brick and mortar store, you're going to fail. And
Hmm.
I'm being blunt because it's true. I've seen it happen in 12 years more times than successes have happened. So I will not sell to a garage guy unless it is your sole source of income and you can
Hmm.
prove to me you don't have a full-time job somewhere
Hmm.
else, and you are doing everything in your power to make sure that you are going to try to get yourself a brick and mortar store,
Hmm.
and you're not just a Facebook seller, you're not just an online seller,
Hmm.
and you're not an eBay seller or a Facebook seller.
Yep.
Online businesses are legit. Unfortunately, I'm old school and I don't even purchase a thing off the internet. I
Hmm.
still go to the store and buy it because I believe in supporting brick and mortar stores. So that's my answer to it. I
All right.
will sell to somebody that is proving to me that they're working their
They're working
hardest
hard. They're in it.
to get to
They're in
that
it for
end
the long term.
goal.
Hmm.
But there's very, very, very few guys that don't have a brick and mortar store that I actually sell to.
Okay.
And the only reason I do sell to them is because of the history that I've had over the years, knowing what they've gone through and where they're going. And most of those stores are now storefronts. Most of the
Hmm.
brick and the garage guys are now storefronts. So if you want what we have to offer and you are not a business, you need to talk to your local fish store. If
Hmm.
their local fish store is not a customer of ACI's,
Hmm.
you go to
Oh,
aciaquaculture.com and sign up for a new customer application that is right there on the website. And you submit it, and once we review it,
yep.
Google Earth is amazing. I've caught so many lies, so many people in lies. But I would
Nice.
guarantee, I have to say this. Um, I probably turned down 19 out of 20 applications
Hmm.
because I know for a fact they're not a storefront. You know,
Yep.
these guys put contact between 5 and 5 and after. Okay, you got a full time job. Throw that one in the
Yeah.
trash. Sorry. You're a hobbyist trying to bypass the retail store, and it
Yep.
happens all the time. And again, if you really truly are trying to get yourself going, I
Hmm.
respect it, and I will do everything I can to help you out if I can.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Okay. Um, one last question for you here. Well, a couple people are like fantastic stream, loving it, tons of good compliments, and lots of people want you to be back on again. So you definitely will be at
Awesome.
some point.
Keep going with the
Um,
questions. I love answering questions.
yeah. Do you have a home personal tank, or do you get your fix from the aquaculture facility?
When you have 20,000 gallons of water, 16 to 20,000 gallons of water that you play with all
Yeah,
day long, every
I
day.
figured so.
My wife's aquarium in the office is 120 gallons.
Okay.
She has to grab me by the ear to pull me in to actually do a water change on that aquarium.
Hmm.
That's not true. That's not true. I love that aquarium as well. It's really just difficult when you have so much to take care of, and we don't have a huge crew.
Hmm.
Own the business, but I still love getting my hands wet. I still love packing. I still love getting
Hmm.
out there and getting into it. So I get my fix from
You're playing with it
staring at
all day,
girls
every day.
literally all, yeah, exactly, all day long.
Hmm.
And if you are a customer of mine, or you aren't and
Hmm.
you want to be, your best bet with me is to call me after you become a customer and say, Chris, I have a $1,500 budget for corals this week.
Hmm.
What do you think I should get? Just give me the reins. All you got to
Hmm.
do is say, I don't want this, and this, and I won't send any of that to you. And I
Hmm.
will never disappoint you by me being your eyes on that $1,500 order.
Hmm.
You will be blown away. I got more customers that don't order off my website.
Hmm.
They just text me. I got
Yep.
3 grand this week. I want 1,000 in fish, 2,000 in corals. Done. They're the easiest orders for me to do because I know I'm
Make
going
me.
to make my customer happy.
Here's some money. Make me something pretty.
I will do it all day long.
Yep.
I will do it all day long. I love doing that.
Awesome. Love it. All right. I'm going to call it for today and definitely have you on again. Thank you so much, Chris. It was an awesome stream and tons of people are telling me how much they love it. Great info. Keep it coming.
Thank
Awesome
you,
stuff.
Devin.
Okay.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody for watching. And yeah, you just let me know when you're ready to do it again,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
get it
Thank you.
done.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks everyone who joined today. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe and I'll catch you guys on the next stream.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Take
Thanks.
care.